Thanks everyone for coming. And we'll open up to questions for Jed right now.
Jed, what were the things you were weighing when deciding to trade Willson Contreras or not? And what ultimately were the reasons that you kept him in a Cub uniform?
Yeah. Obviously, he's in the last year of his contract, and there were teams that, were interested. And, like last year, I think we were willing to listen if someone, gave us a piece that could really help our future, and we never crossed that threshold. And Willson is a really valuable player. He's been a great Cub for, I guess, 6 years now, and we never got to that place where we felt comfortable making a deal to end his tenure here.
How much do you think the addition of Juan Soto on the trade market might have impacted that, and did your conversations with teams change at that?
I think it was like that was the most interesting thing to talk about, and so it probably held the market up a little bit. I guess it was generational talent that's getting traded at 23 years old. Understandably, everyone was waiting to see what happened, and I think we all felt like there'd be some dominoes that would fall when he did move. But ultimately, I don't think it that was what held the market up. I think in some ways, we talk about it in arbitration that the things have sort of trended later and later, close to the deadline. I think that's sort of how the trade market has gone. It's gotten later and later, closer to the deadline all the time. So I just think that last year we did 3 deals in the last couple hours before the deadline, and this year it felt like the deals were trending later as well.
Jed, can you explain, how the international draft, that whole thing impacts your decision making today, and also just what that formula is regarding, you might get a pick if he walks, or if you don't give him a QO, he walks for nothing. How do you measure all that compared to guys you could scout now and maybe trade for?
Well, yeah, I think it's no different than it was before. The rules didn't change. That was what happened, right? The rules didn't change from the past. There was a possibility in the new CBA that would go away. So we made the same calculus, it was the same calculation that we've always made, which is, what is the value of a Comp B pick, and how does that factor into our decision making? How does this impact the free agent market? So it's always this, basically back to the same calculus we've always had.
Jed, last year at the deadline.
Jed, you said earlier in the year in spring training that you wanted to see how Willson reacted to this year and how he came up as a leader on this team. Has your opinion and the organization's opinion changed about Willson Contreras from a year ago right now until right now?
No, I think I've always had a really high opinion of how hard he plays, and I feel like there's no one that sort of cares more than he does. I think it's his energy is infectious, and he's a really talented catcher. So I don't think our opinion has changed at all.
Jed, last year at this time, you talked about not letting a crisis go to waste and not going halfway with things. With that in mind, do you kind of look at this as a missed opportunity?
I guess I would say that, no, I wouldn't say that. I think that would be, last year at the deadline, things lined up for us where we had really motivated buyers at the right times. And, I think this year in some ways makes me realize how fortunate we were last year from a prospect standpoint to be able to accomplish what we did. This year, we never exceeded, that value, and specifically when it comes to, you're talking about Willson. So I don't see it as anything going to waste. I think for me, more looking back, in these markets, when you're talking to different teams, it really is dependent on who you're talking to and how motivated they are to win a title, to bring a all-star caliber player into their clubhouse. And this year we just didn't find that. We were I think you saw around the league. I mean, I'm still very much the dust is settling. I'm still very much trying to figure out exactly what happened. I think some things usually happen late, and I haven't had a chance really to sit down and look at it. But it seems like a lot of players, stayed put, and I think that was because in a lot of these markets, you had very rational buyers and did not have buyers who are willing to part with certain prospects. And we talk about building the next great Cubs team. We're trying to do that on the back of really good prospects, and simply trading players to say you got prospects that you don't believe in or you don't find very talented, that doesn't make anything great at all. So we never found deals that exceeded the value of the players we had, and when we did, I think we made some deals that I think we got really talented arms. But I do feel like in some of the other markets, the buyers were motivated.
Hey, Jed, on the human side, I mean, how much do you worry about just kind of the emotional toll this took on Wilson? I mean, it was a week ago he was saying goodbye to fans, and he kind of had to go through this limbo this week. What can you do from your side in the wake of kind of what he went through this last week?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, I've watched it along with everyone, and I think that maybe because of last year and the fact that we were able to find deals last year that for our expiring contracts that really have held up exceptionally well. I think that maybe there was this assumption that we would definitely move him. There was never anything said by us. We've obviously, we're not going to talk about contract negotiations, but obviously I've been in communication with his agents, throughout the month, and we never gave any message to anyone that was like, we're going to trade him at all costs. Or, it was like, we're obviously going to discuss him with teams, and if it makes sense for the Cubs, we'll do it. So, I think he knew that, but obviously I think like I said, I think there was the assumption based on last year that we would do it. And I do feel for him on the emotional toll, saying goodbye to people, thinking you played your last game and things like, with the Cubs, and then obviously, not being traded. I think there's a yo-yo impact to that. But again, it's not based on any mismessaging from our side. We never said that. We never found a deal that came close to the right value.
Jed, were you kind of surprised at the end of the day, because contending teams needed catchers? Catchers did move, maybe not the caliber of Wilson. So are you kind of surprised you're sitting here explaining this? Did you think it would happen?
I wouldn't really want to characterize that emotion. I think that, like I said at the beginning, I think I realized, after the deadline ended, that last year, things lined up for us in a different way. And I think that, some of that, I think it might be the change in the playoff structure. There was a number of playoff contending teams that stood pat, which is really unusual. And so I do think that that might have had something to do with it. Just like it was a lack of aggression by some of those teams, but I wouldn't characterize it as surprised or anything like that. I would just say it definitely did not line up or feel the same level of aggression that we had last year.
What was there for Scott Effross in the market, and what ultimately went into deciding to move him?
Yeah. We had an aggressive market on Scott. We were talking to a number of teams. Teams are always much more willing to give up, value, when it comes to a player that's under control for a number of years. And obviously he was having a great year. And, I think the world of Scott. He's been in the organization a long time, been through a lot of ups and downs. Obviously, to drop his arm slot in order to continue his career, and it couldn't have worked any better. And so I really respect what his journey, I guess I would say. But for us, we just felt like the ability to add a really talented starting pitcher or starting pitching prospect made a lot of sense. And I think Scott right now is, he needs to be pitching high leverage innings, and for a team that's that there's going to be a probably 1 or 2 seed in the playoffs and going deep in the playoffs. And, for us, the ability to get that kind of starting pitcher for our future, it just made all the sense in the world. So difficult trade to make in the sense I really think Scott's an excellent pitcher. We control him for 5 years, but at the same time, given what we're trying to build here, I thought that deal really made sense for the Cubs too.
Yeah, there's 0 free agent pitching available going toward next year. Does that just motivate you guys more to obtaining this young talent that you have for your minor league system and just keep going that way in your rebuild or whatever you're calling it? I'm sorry. Didn't mean to say rebuild.
It's a everyone's going to pay you for saying that. I was going to say that yeah, the pitching market is tight. There's no doubt, and you've got to draft arms and you've got to develop arms. And I think when you look at our draft this year, when you look at our focus at the trade deadline, obviously it was to acquire arms. All that said, last year we acquired mostly bats at the deadline, with the exception of Killian. And this year, it went a different direction. That some of that in some cases was strategic, and some of that was simply the way the market's lined up. But yeah, right now, the pitching market is very tight, and as a result, I think that having your good internal options is really valuable.
Jed, last year, those trades opened a lot of opportunities over the final 2 months to get looks at different guys and kind of set up some pieces for this year. How are you kind of approaching these final 2 months in terms of what you're hoping to get out of it? Where you have some guys here that might be on expiring deals and might not be back next year.
Yeah, I think there's that aspect of it. I think last year, Scott Effross, for example, was able to come up and make a really strong impression. Had we been in contention, he might not have gotten that look. So obviously, I think you can use those last couple months to see that. I think in the bullpen in particular, I think we'll definitely use this time to look at a lot of guys that have been in our system that have a lot of talent, but maybe haven't gotten that opportunity. So we'll certainly look to do that.
Jed, have you had a chance to speak with Wilson yet?
No, I mean, their guys are preparing for a game when this thing ended. We've talked to Rossi, but I haven't had a chance to talk to Wilson. And I think, obviously Ian as well, I haven't had a chance to do that just because of where they were in the game prep up. I'll probably catch up with those guys tonight or tomorrow. And I think we've mentioned, Wilson a lot, but I feel like with Ian as well, I do understand the emotional toll that it takes when you're, waiting on a phone call and reading rumors. And, I know that would be difficult, for me if I was in that situation. And I do really understand the human toll that takes on guys. And I definitely want to, sit down and talk to those guys. And, part of it is we value those guys really highly. They're really good players. They just played in the All-Star game. And, I do think that that is certainly part of it, but it can't have been an easy week. And frankly, like the way this has trended, I think that the media coverage or the national coverage of the trade deadline starts, basically this year started at the All-Star game. And it feels like that that's longer than I remember it. And I think that makes it even harder for those guys that it seems like there's just 10-day to 2-week countdown now to the deadline. And so I think those guys have been on eggshells for a while.
I guess, do you look at the situation differently now? Is Wilson a player that you would want to build around and engage in free agency?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go through the contract negotiation thing. I think we've been there. I'm not going to talk about that, in this forum.
We have anything else for Jed?
Jed, can you just kind of walk through the guys that you did acquire, the Ben Brown and I know you mentioned Hayden Wisinski a bit and Gonzalez. Can you kind of just give us a little rundown of what you liked to each guy?
Yeah, I think that I guess we're trying to add power arms in every deal, and that was the biggest focus. Those are guys we had targeted. Obviously the most high profile guy was Wisniewski. And, we love the fact that, it's a 4-pitch mix. He's already competed, in AAA at a high level. And he was a guy that we had discussions about him going back a ways, and Brown was as well. He had come up in other deals. So it was interesting that the guys that we ended up grabbing are players that, had come up previously with those teams in different discussions. And, sometimes that familiarity helps to do deals. But I'm looking forward to getting all those guys and, Cubs uniforms at various levels. We'll sit down after this, and we'll sit down with player development, talk through their plans and where we want to go with them. But listen, I really feel good about where our system is right now as a whole. I think we're really deep. I think we've continued to get deeper through a good draft and through the deadline. And obviously, last year we acquired a ton of prospects, and I'm really proud of, where we've come in 1 year. I think the depth of our system from, kind of the beginning of last winter to now, I think the depth of our system is just immeasurably better. And I think that bodes exceptionally well for the future.
You talk about the pride you have in your organization's pitching lab and people who develop. A couple general managers talked about the fact that 2 years in a row, you guys have supplied some pretty outstanding bullpen guys for other teams to compete with. Where does all that credit go? How do you feel about it?
Well, it's sort of twofold. I think that I give our pro scouting department a lot of credit. I think that, we've done a good job in finding the right pieces to fill out a bullpen the last couple of years. We've actually had pretty good bullpens in the first half the last couple of years, and obviously been able to use those those resources to those pitchers to go get really good prospects. I think that when you look at obviously Effross, but Robertson and Givens, and you look at last year, obviously it was Kimbrel, but we signed Chafin and Tepera, and some of those guys were signed on fairly inexpensive deals when they weren't highly prioritized by the market. So really proud of the pro scouting department. Garrett Chido and Andrew Bassett have done a great job with that, and give the player development staff a lot of credit too. Ron Vallone, working with Scott Effross on dropping down, I think is there's no way we have Hayden Wesneski in our system right now had he not done a great job with that. And in general, I'm really proud of our pitching infrastructure. We've worked really hard over the last 2 or 3 years to build that up. I think Craig Breslow, Casey Jacobson, James Ogden have done a fantastic job of really reshaping our pitching culture. I think Tommy Hotovy and Daniel Moskos and Chris Young do a great job in the big leagues. So I think we've really turned a corner. I think we're going to develop a lot of pitching over the next few years. And to go back to Bruce's question, it's really hard to find pitching, and I'm really glad that we're going to be developing a lot of pitching internally.
How close do you think Wesneski is to the big leagues?
Obviously he's made, I think, but probably around 20 starts in AAA. I think when you look at it, and he's done a really good job. So obviously there's always development left, but certainly having a guy that's had that kind of performance in AAA means he's not that far off.
Any chance we see him this year?
I don't want to go there yet, but certainly he's we're going to be watching him carefully in Iowa.
Hey, Jed, both Ian and Wilson have talked about how they feel it's important to have players who can link back to the last playoff runs. And as you sort of forecast to your next great Cubs team, do you think that's important to have people around who can speak to the last run, maybe have those bridge veterans?
I think it's always valuable to have guys that have been around winning. Rossi and I talk about that a lot. I think that having experienced what winning looks like day in, day out, the grind that it takes, the focus that it takes, I do think that that's really important, and I think whether it's on the free agent market or internally, I do think, valuing guys that have been a part of that is a big deal, and so, yeah, I think that, having guys that have been around winning, having coaches that have been around winning, having, executives that have been around winning, I think is really important.
One of the things you said when Carter Hawkins got brought in, just the background of drafting pitching, developing pitching, how influential has he been during this process and the draft as well, of just that trust and, finding good pitching?
Very much. I think we had sort of charted a course here, with the pitching infrastructure that I talked about, and it's been awesome to have him come in and, there's probably certain things that they did different there that we can tweak, and there's probably certain things we learned that they're doing that we're doing as well. So, it's a nice check on our processes to have someone that's been a part of so much development of pitching. Cleveland's done a fantastic job of drafting and developing guys, getting them to come up and be really successful big league starters and relievers. And so having someone that's been a part of that is great. And listen, I think we're doing a lot of good things here. I think we were before, but it's nice having that double check, and it's nice having someone that can probably recommend some tweaks in certain areas.
Jed, in 2014 at the trade deadline, I think Theo said something like, this is the end of us selling at the deadline. Do you kind of foresee that for you guys? Are you prepared to say something similar?
I mean, you never want to be in a position of selling. To me, you want to be buyers. I'm always envious of the buyers. It's difficult to buy. You're giving up prospects you've gotten to know and drafted and developed, and there's always a pain in doing that. But you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it because your team is winning, and the goal of this is to win championships. That's the goal. And so I don't think we're in a place right now to say we'll never sell, but I don't like to sell. That's not the goal. The goal is always to be winning. And but the reason that you do sell, you sell because a lot of times it puts you in a better position to win later on. I think that when I look back on the moves we made to build the special team that we had from really from 15 to 21, a lot of those players were born of those trades at the deadline, and some were highly touted. Addison Russell was a guy that was highly touted when we brought him in, but some were not. Kyle Hendricks was the second player in a deal that wasn't highly touted. Obviously, Jake Arrieta had a 7 ERA with Baltimore when we brought him in. So I think sometimes it's the high profile guys that help you, and sometimes you realize that when you take a lot of shots on goal and you bring a lot of young players into the system and you have really good player development, then those guys exceed your expectations. So the reason that you sell it is to sort of build that core to have that special team. But no, I don't want to be in that position. I want to be in a position of being on the other side of this. That's when you're winning, and that's when you can buy to have those special memories of playoff runs and of championships.
We have anything else for Jed?
Jed, just to round out the return, what jumped out about McKinstry?
Oh yeah, he's a really versatile young player. We had talked to the Dodgers throughout the year about him. Never quite lined up on value during the course of the year, and then when we talked about Chris Martin in that context, it made a lot of sense. I think he'd been sort of blocked in their system, but yeah, he's a really versatile player. Left-handed bat, and I think we can give him real opportunity. And or given the kind of opportunity I don't think he was able to get with the Dodgers this year.
All right, we have anything else?
Thanks, guys. I first of all, I appreciate it. Thanks for your patience. Obviously, these last 2 or 3 days, it's hard to be available because so many things are going on. I look forward to talking to you guys in person after I've slept and reintroduce myself to my family and my kids or whatever. But I do look forward to seeing you guys in person here on Friday, and we can continue down some of these lines of questioning when I've got my synapses are not fried. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate it.